This is Commander Shepard. You're listening to ThisWeekInGeek.net, and this is my favorite podcast on the Citadel.
Who disrupts my coronation?
Everyone has been destroyed because of this freak. I won't allow it! These babies just saved this lame fest party!
You are listening to Twig, otherwise known as ThisWeekInGeek.net. I'm your host, Mike the Birdman Dodd, and you may notice the room is, well, you may say it's a little bit empty this week, as you can probably, hear. I'm not joined by my ever-lovable and fat-friendly co-mate. That would be Alex, the producer. No, I'm actually doing yet another solo interview here on the show as 2020 progresses forward towards something hopefully hopeful or the inevitable doom of the human race. We are here to provide you more content as we count down to annihilation. But no, today is actually something rather fun, something entertaining, uplifting, because, hey, we all need a little bit of sunshine in our lives when the world seems a little bit gloomy. So it is the month of February right now, and that's generally the month of love, relationships, and perhaps something a little bit more if you happen to be looking for that. No judgment here. Party on. So I got contacted a few weeks ago by a woman named Gina, and she pitched to me this author named Kate Wiswell, and she wrote this book that is called Full-Frontal Nerdity, Lessons in Loving and Living with Your Brain. And I've been reading this book over the past couple of days and really, really enjoying myself. You might be asking, well, what is this book about? It's actually a collection of short essays and musings about pretty much life, relationships, but also applying it through the lens of some of the stuff that Kate herself has studied. She has a degree in English Lit, although she did go to Harvard to become a cryptographer. So she wanted to do some NSA CIA bullshit. But she also studied physics, stats, philosophy, mythology, and marching band, oddly enough. And I want to welcome her to the show because we're going to kind of delve into this, because reading this kind of made me have some pause while kind of looking through it, and some rather interesting analogies, because some of her essays mix math with love, and some of the science is actually really interesting, though I don't know whether it hold up to peer studies. So let's welcome Kate to the show.
Hi. Thanks for having me. I
am very excited to talk to you. It's nice to talk to an author, especially when a book is so fresh in your mind. So I guess let's, as I just kind of alluded to in my intro there, let's kind of get to your background, your origin story, your issue zero, prologue zero, as it were. Where did you grow up? And how did you find yourself attending one of the most prestigious schools in the world?
Well, that was kind of an accident. No, I am from New Hampshire. I was born in the very northern tip. I just tell people almost Canada because that's geographically accurate. And then we eventually moved a little further south, but it's still pretty far north. And my parents were both teachers, so I was a nerd from pretty early on. But yeah, the wanting to be a cryptographer thing came from, I saw the movie Sneakers.
Nice.
And decided, I was like, code breaking. That's what I want to do. And I'd always loved puzzles. So I was like, who doesn't want an entire life built around puzzles? Right? Mm-hmm. So my dream school actually was MIT. That was my goal, was to go there. And so when college time came around, I applied to MIT and I did get in, which was very exciting. Then realized I probably couldn't afford it. I did apply to Harvard, never thinking that I would get in. And then I got accepted, and it was like, I don't know how this happened, but this is amazing. And my father was basically like, we never thought this would happen, but if we have to sell the family car to send you to Harvard, we would not that would have covered it. But frankly, they cost about the same, but Harvard gave me way more money. So I was going to be in a lot less debt going there, and my parents would be in less debt going there. So, and plus, you get into some place like Harvard and you're like, okay, how do you turn that down?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I really looked forward to the idea also of being kind of like a smaller fish in a bigger pond after public high school in New Hampshire. And everybody knowing if you ever made a mistake in math class, by the time 2 periods had gone by, people are like, ooh, you messed up today in math class. That's me. I didn't need that kind of environment.
So, wow, like I said, just being thrown into like such a school like that. And then like I said, you want to go there for cryptography. How did you end up in English lit?
Yeah, that was weird. So, yeah, I definitely, thank God I ended up not going to MIT, because if I had become an English major at MIT, it would have been a very weird experience. And I don't know if I ever would have switched majors, but I do think it was the right choice for me. I basically always knew I was good at math and science, because it's easy to know when you're good at math and science, because you just get the right answer to things. And so I started as an applied math major, and I enjoyed my math classes, and I took physics my freshman year as well, just because I had always really liked physics. And I was enjoying it, but one of my goals in going to college was to learn how to do some of the things I never learned how to do as a total nerd growing up, which is like have a social life and, be more outgoing, try and make friends and have different experiences, which is something I'd always been too scared to do when I was in high school. So I realized that as an applied math major, I basically was spending all of my time doing problem sets, because coming from a public high school and being thrown into that environment, I really was behind everyone else I was in class with. They had been taking AP classes, and they'd gone to like magnet high schools that specialized in math. And so I had so much catching up to do, and I was able to get it done, but it was taking up my entire life. And I also missed reading and writing way more than I expected. I didn't ever have to like write a paper. And by the end of the year, I felt like I hadn't created anything. So you declare your concentration at the end of your freshman year at Harvard, or your major. I know it's pretentious to call it a concentration, but that's what they call it. So I did this experiment where I like mapped out my classes if I was a math major for the next 3 years and if I was an English major, and I could not fit all the English classes I would have wanted to take into the schedule. So I was like, clearly this is where my heart lives. So I switched.
So now that you've had a chance to, like I said, change your concentration and you went along a more creative path, you did mention that you did study philosophy and mythology. How does that kind of like, what did you learn in Harvard with being such the educational institution that it is? Because I imagine the learning experience there must be so much more, I don't know how else to describe it, just better than anywhere else. Because when I read through your book, I can read just you applying all these different things to it that make the examples, witty as they are too, more relatable.
Well, yeah, I would say, Harvard is like any other college in that your educational experience is what you make of it. There are definitely people there who are not going, who don't care about class. They don't invest in their learning. If you really want to become a master in something, you can go really far, but that's more motivated by you. I took classes in a lot of different things, in part because there is a core curriculum at Harvard. So you do have to take classes outside of your major in certain key areas. Although as a math major, you had to take philosophy as kind of like a more of a language arts kind of discipline. But then I became an English major, so my philosophy class ended up kind of being just an extra. That it was just something that I was on my schedule, I guess, just for fun. Mm-hmm. I would say, though, in terms of the book, my combining a lot of these things that I study still read about them now just because that's me. That's who I am. Like I've always loved, when I was little, I had pictures of Albert Einstein on my bedroom wall. I didn't have, I didn't have Tiger Beat posters. I had 4 different posters of Albert Einstein on my bedroom wall. I've just always been into like reading about relativity, and I had a lot of physics major friends in college, and just listening to them talk about quantum theory made me want to learn more. I describe myself as a nerd of all trades because everything interests me, but a master of none because I'm not an expert in anything. I hear what you say about a lot of my science not necessarily standing up to peer review, although I work really hard to keep it accurate, even though it's basic.
So with that in mind, you take all the various things you've learned and you do make some really interesting real life examples. There's one personal essay you write in there, and I can't remember the title of it, but one line stuck out to me in particular, and you compared it was about a gamble you take, and it was about OkCupid and Taco Bell. That particularly stuck out to me because I thought that line was just amazingly funny. But it was about how you picked someone and you applied a math formula to it, or there was like a way of thinking, Bayesian or something.
Yeah, Bayesian reasoning. Yeah,
there you go.
Which is from statistics. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you please explain that to my listeners? Because I found that chapter utterly fascinating.
Well, thank you. Yeah, so I stumbled across Bayesian reasoning actually, like not in any of my math classes, believe it or not, but because I never took statistics. In reading Nate Silver's book, I'm a big Nate Silver fan, and so I read his book, The Signal and the Noise, and he talks a lot about Bayesian reasoning, and so I then further decided to study Bayesian reasoning. It's basically a principle of reasoning based off of probabilistic thinking, or evolving your view of the world based off of increasing or decreasing likelihoods from each new learned experience, as opposed to letting the thing that just happened be the one thing that influences your actions, or thinking about things in isolation. So the analogy that I use is dating, right? So, somebody asks for your phone number and then doesn't text. I say call, but that's because I'm old, but they don't text, right? They're like, hey, I want to hit you up. And then you don't hear from them, and that happens once. And that doesn't tell you everything about anything. We don't know everything, something could have happened, or they really weren't that into you. And it's like, how do you make that decision? And the idea of applying Bayesian reasoning is, okay, you have to come at it from within with some realistic things, like, do you think that you're someone who nobody would be into? It's like, where are you starting from? What are your priors? That's the mathematical term. Where are you starting from in terms of your belief that somebody would just lie and ask for your number but not really be into you? Right? And then adding this one experience of that having happened, does that make you think it's more likely that you're someone that would happen to, or is that maybe it's just a freak accident? But then if that kind of thing starts happening more and more with each new experience, you have to kind of like adjust your thinking about yourself and about the world and say, okay, if I run into this person again and then they still don't text me, then it's increasingly in its likelihood that they are not that into me, and the more that keeps happening, you have to listen to the amassing information and adjust your probabilities so that you can be reasonable and not just keep making excuses for that person every time it doesn't happen. Mm-hmm. Right. But at the same time, you also can't have it happen once and then just be like, they're terrible, they're not that into me. I mean, because there is also a probability the first time that they lost your number or something.
Yeah, so it's like basically gathering more data to increase that formula as time goes on. Then you make a logical decision based upon the experiences you've lived, correct?
Exactly, which is really how we should learn. It's how we actually naturally learn. But when we're dealing with emotional things, we don't tend to think that way.
Yeah, because... because like while I was like going through your book and kind of looking at it, and I realized, because I spent a lot of time on social media, and I'd seen someone recently talk not about this directly, but it was very relatable. The fact that they'd met somebody, they'd given them their number, and they hadn't heard from them in days. And as I was reading the chapter in your book, I'm thinking, well, why don't you just find a way to get in contact with them, like increase your probability of getting in contact, like do something to increase those probability odds of there being contact. And if they don't contact you after so long, then, maybe it's a lost cause sort of thing. And I'm just, even when I look back on my own personal experiences with people in my life, not necessarily me, because I don't take no for an answer. I'm persistent and stupid, much to my detriment, as Alex, the producer, will probably tell you. It's just one of those things that you're right. People don't tend to think logically when emotion plays into it, because we are creatures of emotional habit. And
Absolutely.
It's difficult to get around that hard wiring, because the heart always wants, and the mind sometimes gets in the way of what the heart wants, and it's complicated. And that kind of leads me into my next thing, and this was looking for someone. And you had this essay, which is in the same chapter, and it was called Drummer Wanted Timing Optional. And you used the example of music for how you're looking for someone. Like if you're looking for a drummer in a band, well, you can look your entire life, look for your own E Street band or whatever. You want someone to accompany you. Now you can either pursue your own path and enjoy it, or you can look for someone who would be a great companion piece to you, sort of playing the field and doing whatever. And I liked that analogy too, like, because there's in another essay, you talk about the statistical probability of finding the quote unquote one, and that one could be in North Korea. And
yes, or the village, they're never getting out.
Exactly. And I really liked that, because the idea of finding the perfect fit for you is just not possible. It's finding the person who works the best with you, given your current options. And that's not settling. That's being smart with the math.
Right. Well, it's being open to the idea that more than one person is going to satisfy the criteria that you need for a successful relationship.
Yeah. And you gave another great math example using ice cream that I really liked. And it was just something about whittling the numbers down, but it was like, if you try this one flavor, it's now or never. And that's not a good way to approach things. You have to know what's out there to know what makes you work as a person, because it's not just about finding a romantic relationship, it's about finding what makes you function as well. Like personal development and relationships kind of go hand in hand.
Yes.
And that's sort of something that I looked at in this book as I kept reading through it. And the next chapter kind of hit me a little harder than I expected, and it was the April Fool chapter. And it just reading through that and reading through your personal experiences.
That was one of the most personal ones.
Yeah, because one of your examples out of it hit me hard. You talked about traveling to England to meet a boyfriend, and how you had a wonderful week. You wouldn't trade it for the world, but after you left, it didn't last. And
no, he met his wife the next day. Yeah,
that's sometimes how it goes, but those experiences don't take away from what we learned.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the theme, as you probably can see, the theme that comes up many times is there's something to be said for just enjoying the experience. That even with the drummer wanted, concept is you can be working towards an end goal, or you can decide to enjoy the journey, hoping for a particular destination, which will very likely arrive. But why not? From my perspective, my personal choice is I'm going to enjoy the journey. I am going to work on myself and enjoying life and being the best person that I can be. And eventually I'm going to run into that person who is a really excellent counterpoint. And I know now, having had all this life experience, I now can recognize the qualities that make this person an excellent partner. And I am now ready to be an excellent partner in return. And then we can make beautiful music together. I mean, Side note, that essay came out of me trying to explain to my mother why I wasn't online dating.
Yeah, because let's talk about online dating for a moment, because I've got some opinions on this, and I'd love to hear your insights on this.
Excellent.
Do you not feel like online dating is different now than it was, say, 15 years ago? And to kind of give you a personal example, me and my wife met online back in 2007. We got married in 2011. And as I've noticed some of my friends go through the relationships ups and downs and boyfriends, girlfriends, and everything else in between, the culture is moving away from less a monogamous relationship to polyamorous, which is fine. But it just seems to be more like ships passing in the night. And is that just them exploring their personal options without being tied down to a societal expectation of monogamy? Or what is that, do you think?
That's a really interesting question. I mean, I do think that I agree with you that I've seen that shift, but I wonder if it's kind of a natural shift, because when I would watch my friends do online dating, most of whom, they were also like, why don't you get on OkCupid and all this stuff? And I was like,
No.
again, right. But because, again, my thing is, I don't want to do an activity whose number one goal is just finding a mate. Like, to me, that wasn't a good use of my time, because I was like, I'm going to run into people doing all kinds of other things, so why not do other things that I enjoy? But I do think that because of the nature of online dating, it's basically just going to a bar looking for a hookup, but just in the digital form. And most people are there looking for, or at the beginning, they were looking for more than a hookup. But it ultimately, what people became to realize was it's a numbers game, right? If I'm going to meet the right person, I just have to meet as many people as possible, which is kind of like gaming the ice cream analogy of like, I'll just test as many flavors as I possibly can, and I'll probably find one that's really good. Right? The more that I eat, the better chances I have of finding one that's great. And so I looked at, like, it seemed miserable. It seemed like a miserable experience, because people like got to the point where they were trying to like line up 3 dates in one night, 3 different times for drinks, just to have decide if anybody made it past the test and to get to the second date or whatever. And it became kind of like this. Yeah, it was like a numbers game. It was just, the more that I can do, the better. And I wonder if just the natural shift from that, because that is not, I think, it's kind of like trying to force connectivity to happen. It's you're trying to force an intimate relationship in a really high speed environment. I guess it's like speed dating in a way. But I wonder if the natural shift to that then was, well, okay, if this format is better suited for this kind of a numbers game, then maybe we will just shift and our thinking, and online dating will become the thing I can use to just have as many experiences as I can, so that I can start to learn what I like and what I don't like. And I'm not so much seriously thinking that I'm going to find my spouse or my partner in an online environment. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to give myself the opportunity to make as many mistakes as possible and learn from them.
I mean, if anything, I think has come out of it. I mean, if like anything as a net positive, I see more people learning to accept themselves as by playing that numbers game, as we've discussed, learning that personal growth along the way. And I'm just hoping people are taking that personal growth to heart, because if you're playing the numbers game, you will get burned at some point. But if you take those mistakes and learn them and embrace from them and be genuine to yourself about what mistakes you did make, then at least you're learning. And that's valuable data, no matter how you want to break it down, even if it leads to heartbreak at some point.
Yeah, you hope the self-reflection and the Bayesian reasoning is going along with all of this massive input of information. I mean, the best way to learn is to make mistakes, right?
Exactly.
But yeah, if you're not going to learn from them, then it's suddenly, now you're just living in a lifestyle that you may or may not enjoy.
One of the other essays that hit me particularly hard, especially from my personal experience, because you'll notice a lot during this interview, your book is connecting with me on a very intimate level. Man, I hope that didn't sound weird.
No, I mean, honestly, I poured my stories into it, so I'm glad it's connecting. Thank you.
There was a thing you called the periodic fable of friendships, or something along those lines.
Yeah, of the elements.
and it explained friendships to me. And as I became, because this is something you probably don't know, as I became disabled, I lost my left leg in an amputation a couple years ago.
Oh, I'm sorry.
A lot. It's life, but I've embraced it. But I've looked at the relationships that have survived, thrived, and ones that have dropped off. And you compared these relationships to elements and metals and other things on the periodic table. I mean, even using mercury, titanium, aluminum, gold, silver, and platinum, I believe. And you explained the different, and copper, and there's different things that change up over the years. And I looked at the lens of my relationships with those. And I've also looked at the experience of growing older with it as well. So if you could please, in summary, surmise that chapter so people might get kind of an insight into how they might look at their relationships, not just romantic anymore, but talking about more of the relationships in their lives.
Yeah. I will say, I love that you started thinking about the relationships in your life and how things changed after having a life-changing experience. Because for me, one of the reasons I started thinking about that idea of the quality of friendship and the different kinds of friendships was moving to Los Angeles and coming out of the academic world and then being thrown into the world of, La La Land, film industry. It was a really difficult wake-up call for me. I was very naive when I showed up here, and I got fooled by a lot of people who I thought were my friends, who I took them at their word. It's taken me a decade or more to get used to the idea that people out here lie. They pretend to be nice to you, and they don't really like you. So that's what got me started thinking about that topic. And then the specific essay, randomly, this is so bizarre. It just, one day I was thinking about the song from like Girl Scouts of like, make new friends, but keep the old. One is silver and the other's gold. Shout out to all my Girl Scouts out there. And so I thought, oh, well, let's, metals, friendships, let's think about it. And then what was great is that the more that I researched the different properties of metals and started really looking into those ideas, I was like, oh, these are really great analogies. But yeah, I was thinking about the different, basically the tensile strength or the conductivity of different metals, and how there are those relationships in your life. Like, my best friend is someone who I met when I was 8 years old, and she moved away when we were 12, and we have still remained best friends for more than 30 years. Even though we have not lived in the same state since we were in elementary school. So there are those friendships in your life that can basically, even though there's not a lot of regular contact, they can sustain any kind of emotional burden, any weight, any distance, any kind of difficulties. And then you have the friendships that are reinforced constantly because they're in your life every day. These are the people like that maybe you work with, or that you live near, and that you see regularly. And I wanted to know, I wanted to think more also about, like, why is it so dissatisfying, the feeling of, of having all of these friends online, but not feeling like you're getting anything out of it. When you start to think of online friends in the same way that you think of your in-life friends, but then it's disappointing ultimately in some way. And it's like, oh, so what is the nature of those friendships? And the people that they feel like your friends, but honestly, if they dropped out of your life or you dropped out of theirs, you might not even notice. So yeah, I was really exploring the idea of qualities of friendships, those people who you think are, who are friends, but you've never really been tested. And then the friendships that have been tested and lasted a really long time. And then at the time as well, I was also contemplating the difficulties of being friends with former romantic partners, which is a whole different level of friendship. And like, when does it work and why does it work? What are some of the qualities? And that's why we get into the idea of you can build a really strong friendship with some distance and some time with somebody who you've had more than friendship with. But if you do it too soon, or if there's still this mix of like one of you wants more, it really does start to get into things like the arsenic analogy, because it's more of like a metalloid. It's got properties of metal, but it's toxic.
that particular part, again, hit me hard because I've become friends with one of my exes. We had a messy breakup. I've talked about this on the show over the years, but we reconnected when I was in college. And in the last 2 years, she's really come back into my life. And because we have a shared intimacy, we can be very honest with each other. Like we can't bullshit each other. We know when each other's lying. We know when each other is not being fully upfront with our feelings, which means there's no need to lie. There is no toxicity there. Yet with other exes, not so much. And I found that analogy particularly just interesting and very applicable to my situation, because I've been able to stay friends with most of them, and yet some of my other friends over the years try to stay friends with their exes, and it's been largely unsuccessful because, as you mentioned, somebody wants something more out of it. Perhaps wounds haven't healed, or there hasn't been that time and distance given.
Yeah. I mean, I have an ex. We were together for most of college, and we didn't really have much of a break needed between our relationship and our breakup, because our breakup was on really good terms. It was just we wanted different things. And it was just kind of time. I mean, every breakup is a little bit rough, but it didn't take long for us to be able to just focus in on the fact that we cared about each other and that we knew each other incredibly well and that we appreciated that intimate knowledge of each other. So we just became very good friends, pretty quickly. But at the time that I was developing this piece, I was in a place where I had broken up with a boyfriend and he just wanted us to be friends, like immediately. And I was still in love with him, and it was a problem. And I kept trying to accommodate him, but it just kept becoming disaster.
It's not good for your mental health to not have that space to heal and to come to realizations within yourself. And that's something a lot of people are finally coming to terms with. I think nowadays mental health is really important. And that's something that I think after a relationship, a lot of people I think people are seeing it now because the conversation around mental health is so important now. Mm-hmm. And relationships do play an important part in that. So, wow.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I was just going to say one of my goals, I pitched this book as putting intelligence back in your emotional intelligence. And because I do think that mental health is incredibly important, and it took me a really long time to get good at personal analysis and actually, introspection and growth. And I credit a ton of it to my improv training, because when I did come out to Los Angeles, before I was a writer, I was an improviser and a sketch comedian. And, improv training is basically therapy. But it also forces you to make connections between things that you wouldn't expect to make connections between, which is kind of how this entire book was born, because I started applying principles from my math and science days to my attempts at emotional growth. Because I do think that we could all stand to benefit from adding some logic and some inspiration from some more scientific study into the overwhelming dominance of our emotions.
Yeah, I mean, emotional intelligence and being able to understand what that means as a person, I think that's something that finally people are getting now, and I'm surprised it's taken this long. I've always kind of understood who I was, but it's only in the last couple of years that I'm understanding why that is. In fact, when this interview goes up, presumably very early next week, we'll have just recorded a show talking about our favorite fictional characters. Mm-hmm. And I'll ask you this question. I'd love to get your idea behind this as well. One of my characters that I compared myself to, or why I'm really attracted to it, is the Doctor from Doctor Who. Mm-hmm. And it's not just because he's a man with a screwdriver and a box running around all time in space,
or a woman.
Or a woman. Yeah, that's right. Jodie Whittaker. And love it's because the life is affected by tragedy. In the early years, yes, it was adventures, a little bit goofy, but as time has wore on and the series matured a little bit, it's a very heavy burden to wear, to want to save everybody, and you can't.
Yes.
And I think applying that with emotional intelligence kind of I reflect that mirror upon myself, realizing part of my emotional being is I want everybody to like me. I want to save everybody I possibly can, but I can't. And I have to be okay with that. And that's not my fault either, because there's a difference between self-interest and selfish. So I guess I'll throw the question at you. When you looked at, when you were writing this book, when you look back at your influences, were there any fictional characters you maybe kind of drew inspiration from when you were like kind of writing this, saying, hey, maybe I relate to this person more because of X, and maybe that influenced something in there?
Well, there's literally a piece on Lois Lane in there.
I didn't get that far. I'm sorry.
That's okay. It's later. It's near the end of the book. She was definitely when I was younger, one of my heroes. But it's funny. The piece is actually about my coming to terms with the fact that being Superman's girlfriend really sucks, and that Lois didn't stand up for herself enough. Like, I was actually, it's me coming to the realization that one of the things that I loved most about Lois Lane was the fact that Superman loved her, and that it was me, as when I was younger, defining myself by the worth that other people put on me. Like, if a cool guy or a cool girl liked me, then I felt more worthy, instead of trying to find that worth in myself. And so when I had a dating experience where I was kind of dating a Superman, and I realized that I had to stand up for myself, because I didn't know why I felt terrible in the relationship a lot. And it was in part because I came kind of second to everyone else. And then I was like, oh, it's okay for me to be angry about that. But honestly, my earliest influence and the person I've always wanted to be was Princess Leia.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah,
what is it about Leia that really attracts you to her?
At this point, I don't know if it's more Leia than Carrie Fisher or more the other way around. But I think I've always related to the idea of being a woman in a man's world, but wanting to be the leader, wanting to be, wanting to be able to help, to be in charge, to have for people to take my skills and use them and maximize them, or, just to be able to do what I know that I can do, even though I'm female, and so I just loved when Carrie Fisher gets rescued and then turns around and basically takes over her own rescue because these guys are incompetent at doing what they're trying to do. I was like, this woman, I want to be her.
Yeah, Princess Leia has always been a character I've loved, especially since I read a lot of the Star Wars Expanded Universe novels throughout the 90s and early 2000s. I will agree, some media has done her dirty, but for the most part, she's always been that strong, capable leader. And that's what I've always appreciated about her. Then, especially when Carrie Fisher herself would speak up for mental health, too.
Yes. Yeah. Just talk about being a brave person, and also just being someone who, through a lot of pain and learning, got to the point where she was like, this is who I am. I love who I am. Take me or leave me.
Yeah, that takes a lot of strength, not just of personality, but to be authentic and genuine to oneself. And to present that on a stage such as the entertainment industry takes an unbelievable courage of character, and something that I think the world needs. And I'm incredibly still very sad to this day that she's no longer with us. Seeing her in The Rise of Skywalker was bittersweet again, but it was nice to see her one last time.
Yeah, but I still can't see her without crying. It's just so sad.
When I read some of her quotes, I do get kind of a little bit of a lump in the throat, because I think of all that she's contributed. And I hope more people hear her story and see her more as Slave Leia. I want them to see more of her as General Leia.
Absolutely. Yeah. And even as Slave Leia, though, she killed the guy.
Yeah, she choked out the most infamous gangster in the galaxy.
Exactly. But it's one of her quotes that I use as almost daily inspiration, which is, take your broken heart and turn it into art.
Yeah,
Which,
and that's
yeah, I mean, if this book isn't that, I don't know what is. But I have to say also, I mean, the title itself, Full Frontal Nerdity being it's the name of my website. It was the name of my blog. The idea behind that is exactly what, Carrie Fisher symbolized to me, which is be who you are, bear yourself, bear your soul, bear your nerdity to the world. Don't be ashamed of it, because for a long time, I wasn't necessarily ashamed of how much of a nerd I was, but I felt that I accepted that the world thought I deserved less because of it, right? That I just wasn't going to have relationships. I wasn't going to be appealing. Growing up, in high school and college, I felt like my experience with dating was that guys didn't like me as much. They didn't think of me that way. And it took a long time for me to decide that I could demand, or I could expect just as much as anybody else, that I get to be who I am and also have people love me for who I am.
absolutely, like, that makes me think of two quotes, and then we'll begin to wrap this up, I think. I always think of the one quote: I'd rather be hated for who I am than for love for who I am not. Yes. I don't know who that's attributed to. And then there's a quote by Nietzsche, I think, and it says, and I'm trying to remember what it is off the top of my head, but it basically boils down to, you must not want something to be forward, not different, not backward, not in all eternity, not only to bear what is necessary, but to love it. And I've always interpreted that is to take all the experiences, no matter how bad or good they are, embrace that, because that makes you you. And that will always see you through to the end of the day. And somebody will love you, the fact that you've had that strength of conviction to be that true to yourself.
Yeah.
So that's something that I got out of your book. So,
well, thank you. I am glad.
Thank you so much for sharing not just a piece of your life, because that's what all books are, a slice of life, but also giving you an insight into who you are as a person. And I think people should definitely pick this book up. If you do want to pick this book up, you can ask your local brick and mortar bookstores to find it. The book is called Full-Frontal Nerdity: Lessons in Loving and Living with Your Brain by K.S. Wiswell. I have a really cool copy. So you can also find this book on Amazon.com and .ca for those of you who prefer that way as well. If they want to find you around the web, where could they find you?
They can find me on Twitter and Instagram. I'm at @FrontalNerd. And I'm also on Facebook at Full Frontal Nerdity. And then my website is fullfrontalnerdity.com with a hyphen between the full and frontal. Just
fantastic.
So you know, because, it's grammatically correct, and also it will get you there.
Well, Kate, I got to say, I've had a fantastically good time talking with you today, and I hope we get a chance to speak again in the future.
I hope so, too. I've enjoyed this. Thank
All right,
you so much.
Of course. So just hold on line for just a second. All right, guys. So that was my interview with Kate Wiswell. Definitely a lot of emotions kind of came out during this interview. A lot of them I didn't quite expect, actually. So I really hope you guys will take the opportunity to check this book out. Not just because I think it's a really good collection of short essays. Like, they're really good for short burst reading, because there aren't many that are more than like 10 pages, but they're really short, but they're really good insight think pieces. And so if you're reading this on your way to work, or if you're just reading something at night, it will give you stuff to think about just before you go to sleep, or while you're traveling to whatever day job or whatever activity you happen to be doing that day. And I really do recommend you do check out that chapter on relationships, and particularly look at that through the lens of your own relationships. And I think you'll come to some wonderful truths about it, maybe some ones that are uncomfortable, but ultimately they will benefit you. And as this is the month of love, don't sell yourself short, people. And I've always been a big proponent of advocating for yourself. So don't accept anything less than happiness, or as some stupid rom-coms probably said, don't settle for anything less than butterflies. But hey, my wife said that to me at one point, and look at me almost 12 years later, or 13 years later. She'll hit me for that one. Anyway, for ThisWeekInGeek.net, I've been your host, Mike the Birdman Dodd, saying live free or die hard. And as my friend Jackie Bam Bam might say, be cool, be kind, be careful. We'll catch you guys again next time, right here on ThisWeekInGeek.net.
Well, that's our show. All right, here's the deal. Every time you watch my show, I will send you $40.
Checks will not be honored.
You've been listening to This Week in Geek, your source for guaranteed nonsense or your money back. Tune in next week for more info on the most important things you didn't need to know. Check out our website at ThisWeekInGeek.net and subscribe to our podcast through iTunes or any podcatcher. If you'd like to comment on this episode, head over to this episode's post at ThisWeekInGeek.net and leave a comment through Facebook Connect. Follow us on Twitter at ThisWeekInGeek.net and follow our Instagram at twig_official_podcast. Social media not your thing? Send us an email at feedback@ThisWeekInGeek.net. We'll see you next time, and remember,
Lower your shields and surrender your listenership.
Just when you think this show is terrible, something wonderful happens.
What?
It ends.
I have to go. Somewhere there is a crime happening.